Cheers. Hello, everyone. Guess what I'm here to talk to you about today on today's episode? Probably shouldn't come as any surprise because it's what a lot of people have been talking about over the last 6 to 12 months. But I haven't yet done an episode on it, so I'm going to, and that is AI. And of course, because this is Coffee with Kathleen and we discuss leadership topics here, it's not going to be about how you can use AI in your business or any of that, because there are plenty of people talking about that, and usually from the particular lens of their AI set of tools. But instead, I'm going to talk about what AI is actually doing to you as a leader, and how you might want to think about reacting in response to it so that you can lead through this period and still be a really effective leader and executive, even as we go through massive transformation in our businesses and our business systems. So one thing AI can't do, drink a cup of coffee. So let's do that. Okay, got yours ready? So arguably, one of the things that is currently happening to business leaders in this realm of AI is that for those of us who have embraced it and are regularly using it, and I do count myself in that camp, although I'm pretty strategic about how I use it, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but habitual AI use is weakening your cognitive muscles. It's making your brain dumber. So MIT coined this term. They call it cognitive debt, which is probably a little nicer than saying dumb. And so largely what's happening is that it removes from us the need to think about things, where you can have it write a research paper for you in a matter of minutes. They did some studies with some students, and it showed that students couldn't remember or quote from their own papers 10 minutes after they'd written them, even when they went through and kind of rewrote them in order to fit exactly what the professor had asked of them. And that a day later, they didn't even have any idea what it was about. Executives in the executive frame, executives have used AI to rewrite memos. They've read through them and said, yeah, I agree with this, published the memo. And a week later, when presented with the same memo, most executives didn't even know that it was a memo that they had written, that it was their own memo. So this is what's happening to us, is AI has taken over our thinking in a way that's not healthy, and that doesn't position us for the next phase. Someone I recently was talking to, and that I respect a whole lot, had presented me with a bunch of really, really helpful and useful leadership evaluation information about how I am as a leader, where places where I can improve, all of these kinds of things. And then encouraged me to use AI to generate development plans for me, to evaluate how I talk to my employees, to create employee development plans and all of that. And I very hopefully kindly responded and said, I will never use AI to create an employee development plan, because that is part of where my magic lies as a leader. And they once again encouraged me to really use it because, you know, my gosh, it shortcuts all of this. It creates the development plan in seconds and things of that nature. And certainly it does do that. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't deeply then understand that employee, what that employee's needs are. It doesn't grow and develop my ability to lead or to be a coach or effective mentor. And it certainly doesn't immerse me in what's next for that individual, because as the research shows, using AI to create development plans means that I'm going to immediately forget what those are. And then therefore that doesn't make me an effective coach for that employee. So what I'm going to posit to you is that intelligence or information, to the extent that we define intelligence as information or just general knowledge, that's becoming a commodity. What is scarce, what is precious, what leadership is going to require of us in the next phase is wisdom. And so how do we think about being wise leaders? Well, we have to be able to do stuff that machines can't. And so here's a few areas for us to really think about developing our muscles as leaders, because this is stuff that can't really be done by AI. We have to think about being the discernment layer. We have to decide what really matters. And then we can organize the AI to serve us in this way from an information perspective. So as a recent example, I recently decided that I was going to present a playbook at an upcoming automotive event for a speech that I'm doing. I'm going to do a playbook on what really matters for marketers at the executive table, kind of a marketing playbook, if you will, for executives. And so what I did was I did my own topic development. I decided what are the 5 areas that matter most when you're a marketer, either looking to have a seat at the exec table or already sitting at the exec table, one of the two. What really matters. And I needed to decide what that was, and have my own thematic elements. And then I needed to flesh those out to a certain degree to say, and now what does that really look like when that's in action? And then what I wanted to do was I wanted to find some case studies or some examples that are relevant to the automotive aftermarket to support those ideas. And that is where I used AI to find the research, the relevant research, papers, studies, case studies, et cetera, that would support this point of view. I could have had AI write it from scratch, I'm sure, and it would have come up with a list of things. But those things would not be in alignment with my real world experience as an executive that has marketing responsibilities. So that discernment about what matters, that creation of something from scratch, that generative or creative ability to take my real world experience and translate that into something that an audience might find novel or inspiring or informative is something I need to continue doing so that I'm continuing to flex those muscles. Another thing that AI really doesn't do very well is that reflective activity, that pause before acting, which is sort of part 1A of discernment, right? Like how we can decide what matters and how we can decide what the next best course of action is in that reflection moment, and encouraging and creating that space and that reflection moment for others that we're working with. Very important as leaders that we lean into that. Y'all know that I have a meditation practice, and that is certainly one place where reflection comes into play. But if you don't have a regular meditation practice, that doesn't mean that you're not reflective. It just means that you have to intentionally cultivate that for yourself in some way. The third thing that AI can't do is to take responsibility for things, to really carry the weight of, we're making a decision, we're going in this direction, we're doing this. And what does that really mean for the people we work with, for our customers, for our employees? How do I carry the responsibility for what I'm doing, and really bear the weight of that, understand the consequences of it, watch and be attentive to what's going on in the organization because of it, and then make adjustments, make tweaks, have conversations, create the change management or the ongoing operational changes that are needed to really carry that forward. And then also to recognize what things aren't working, and make adjustments and make changes. Certainly, metrics can point to some of these results. And that's a place, again, where AI can be helpful, is in crunching those numbers, but really making those things relevant and applicable to the business, and understanding what matters and what doesn't is a place that only humans can do. And so recently, an employee had said to me, hey, I'm going to do this research for you because I know you're busy. And, I said, okay, great, because it was something I had signed up to do. And then they gave me a summary. The summary was clearly written by AI, and I could see immediately that AI had missed the point. Why? Because it didn't understand the nuances of our business and our partnerships the way that I do, or that a human being does. And it had missed some really important points. And so while directionally having all of the data computed and compiled, it saved me tons of time. ultimately taking that data and applying it to the business and drawing from it the correct conclusion had to be done by me or by somebody who really deeply understands the business and not by AI. And again, this is an incredibly important point, because if we just become overly reliant and we lose that ability to really connect things to the business in this way, then we're not going to be effective leaders, and we are going to become redundant. We have to be things that machines aren't, and we have to continue to exercise those cognitive muscles. What this means, and my particular orientation and point of view around this is very strong. What this means for us as leaders is that we do actually need to be in the details. Recently, there was also a study done where they were looking at the most effective business leaders at the most effective companies at creating either market value or generating sales, et cetera. And what they learned is that those business leaders are very deeply immersed in the details of their business. They really deeply understand their businesses. They understand their markets. They understand their employees. They understand their customers. And because they are immersed in those details, they can make the best possible decisions. Gone are the days of the high level 10,000 foot view leader that just really doesn't get it. And all of the people underneath them are sort of making all the decisions, and they're just riding over the top and saying the occasional savvy thing. You really need to be the sort of leader who gets it yourself, who understands broadly across the business what all of your different teams are doing, what the inputs and outputs are, and certainly what the AI systems are generating, what the humans are generating, how those two things are working together currently inside of your business. But really having that macro view of the business and then a very detailed view of the business at the same time, both broad and deep views, are going to be very important for this next phase of leadership. The quality that I speak about often on this podcast, and that I think is going to be really important for this detailed, nuanced understanding, is curiosity. Really poking into those different places in the business and understand how they're working, attending the meetings and spending the time. There's still no substitute for that. There's no substitute as well for emotional intelligence, which is the counterpart to curiosity. People don't mind you as much poking into what they're doing and really understand and relating to what they're doing when you exhibit emotional intelligence at the same time. And again, that is a quality that is embodied best by humans. And then the third quality, which is a little bit more difficult to think about or to cultivate, but is divergent thinking. And again, I think the curiosity and emotional intelligence underpin divergent thinking, but that can be really important for how you build strategy moving forward. And it's something, again, that only humans can really effectively embody. And one of the ways to cultivate divergent thinking, if you yourself are not really an out of the box or divergent thinker, is creating systems that allow your teams to think in a divergent or creative way. And part of that is emotional safety, cultivating a sense of curiosity, letting failure be its own kind of success. So where our teams are failing and learning, really celebrating that as opposed to being oppositional to that, really feeling like that's a great outcome because we've now learned a number of different things that we can carry forward into the next phase. That's where we get divergent thinking from, being willing for certain things to break as long as they're not counterintuitive to our values. So there is a good system for thinking about this if you want to engage in it a little bit more. And it's Cal Newport who came up with the idea about slow productivity. Productivity was how I characterized the first part of my career. It's how I built my career from the ground up, is by being a very productive, prolific person. I still want to be a prolific person, but probably in more creative and generative ways, and partly in creating environments where other people can be successful versus my own general productivity, which productivity is something that AI does very, very well, right? And so we need to think about, actually as leaders, how we do fewer things, how we work at a more natural pace, And instead of obsessing about the amount of output, how instead we obsess over the quality and the relevance of the output. And so, really being in that mode of that obsession over quality, staying in the details, and being the ones to make those ethical calls and to uphold the values is an extremely important facet of leadership moving forward. And so something that is critical to this goes back again to things that I talk about in this podcast a lot, which is really being attentive to how we're taking care of ourselves as humans and taking care of ourselves as leaders, and then therefore able to expand that accountable compassion or ethical compassion toward others on the team, so that we are building this from the ground up as well as the top down when we think about this. Lama Rod Owen, somebody I follow, has a great way of speaking about this. He says, if we don't do the work, we become the work. And that's something that I'm attentive to for myself and also for my teams, and what I'm encouraging people to think about or to do. At the end of the day, in my opinion, leadership is irreplaceable. But real leadership requires intentionality, and it requires wisdom, and that wisdom is built through experience and curiosity. And so with that, I wish you cheers on your journey of really integrating AI so that it serves you, and on really focusing on your own unique and creative aspects of leadership that you can continue to offer to your teams, to the market, and to the world at large, which is irreplaceable.